And here we go. It's very nice to see you today, Amy. I think we go back. Gosh, I was going to think about, I wonder if you have a better idea of when that was. I visited your, Amy Eltree studio in North Canton, Ohio. It was a real going concern. You had me out for a workshop. I was so impressed. Do you have any idea of when that might have been?
Well, that was our fourth location. And I opened that one in 1999. And I do think that it wasn't all that long after I opened that I had you there. I think maybe I'd been there a year or so.
Yeah.
And then invited you to come.
My book came out in 99.
Okay.
So I'm guessing it was probably like the next year, 2000.
Yeah, 2000, 2001 would be my guess.
Yeah. So we were just children then.
Oh, yeah. Although, when you think about it, 2000 doesn't sound like that long ago. To me, that's like last year, but then I realized that's actually been like 23 years. So,
yeah. So before we take a look at your art, I would love to know how you became Amy Lindenberger. How did you, where did you come from? How did this happen?
Where did I come from? Okay, well, I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in drawing from the University of Akron. Always knew I wanted to be an artist. In fact, people would ask me, well, you're gonna get a Bachelor of Fine Arts in drawing. What are you gonna do with that? And I'd say, I don't know. I like to draw. So that's how it all started. But in college, we drew in the drawing program. We drew in pretty much any medium you could possibly imagine, but it was all black and white, gray values, maybe brown on a good day, but really didn't do any color work. Now, as part of my degree, I had to take painting courses. And so I was exposed to working in color, but they did not have a dedicated color theory class at that point. So as a result, when I graduated, I was doing some freelance illustrating, but it was all in black and white. And one day, a man that owned one of the agencies I worked for said, you've been here a while and I really like your style. And I think I can really get you some better jobs. But I just realized I don't have any samples of your color work. And I was smart enough, even at that point, to know you don't say, well, that's because I don't have any. So I thought, okay, so how am I going to work in color? And I loved the soft pastel, chalk type pastel. And I tried that, but I can't deal with the dust.
Yeah.
Just cannot deal with the dust. So I had fooled around with colored pencil in high school, but not really specific instruction. And at that time, of course, my mindset was, well, that's not a fine art medium. You don't work in colored pencil for a fine art. So then I thought, well, maybe let's go back and try that again. And it was a lot of trial and error. It was really a lot of trial and error because this would have been 1981.
Oh, wow.
There weren't any books on this subject. Nothing. And so everything that I learned to do with them was just trial and error. And when the first real book came out, Bette Borgeson's The Colored Pencil. I was like ecstatic because I thought, oh, good. Maybe she has some information in there that will, and a lot of what she did, I was already doing, but it was just happenstance that I fell into it, and then I stuck with it because I found that by varying the surfaces I used and the techniques I used, I could make colored pencil imitate a lot of other things. And as an illustrator, that was really helpful, especially a young illustrator who didn't have much money. I just had to learn how to do different things with one medium. And,
That's why you're so, wow, that explains so much. I mean, because you are so experimental and so willing to try something. I'm sort of like, I found Prismacolor and I found Stonehenge, and literally 40 years later, that's still all I use. But you were just like, oh well, let's try this and this and this and this and this.
And that was just definitely necessity is the mother of invention. they'd give me a job and I'd say, okay, how am I going to do that with colored pencil? And so then I would start trying different things. Yeah. So that's where it all went.
And then let's jump to, so how did you like the studio? Tell us about the Amy L. Tree Studio. I think that's
okay. Well, it's actually the Linden Tree.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
That's okay. And what happened was, well, I got married and a couple years later, I found myself divorced with a 1.5-year-old and a 3-year-old. And I realized I was not going to be able to make enough money doing my freelance illustrating and pay for childcare. That was not going to work. I had to find a way to do this at home. And I had to find a way. I could still do some illustrating, but I really needed to supplement my income with teaching. So I had done a display back in that era. Shopping mall art shows were big. I don't know if you remember that, but anyway, we had you paid for a booth, and they had a show for 5 days, 4 days, whatever. And just on a whim, I put out a sheet of paper. One woman stopped and she said, "I find this really intriguing. I would love to learn how to do this. Did you ever think about teaching?" Well, that was a happy accident because, yes, I very much have thought about that. So I just put a sheet of paper out on the table and said, if anybody would be interested in lessons, just put your name and phone number and we'll see what happens. Well, I got probably 20 some names. So then I had to sit down and start writing a class plan for how I was going to approach this. And then once I had it in place, and I called them all, and out of that 20 some, I think eight actually did it. But I thought, okay, it's a place to start, And right. So initially it was just classes in the basement of my townhouse apartment. It was nothing fancy, but word of mouth, it just spread like wildfire. And within a year, I had a separate location. And then it just kind of kept growing from there. I mean, color pencil was so new to people in our area at that point that they were just like, oh my gosh, where has this been, And so they just were really excited about it. And I was the only one doing it. So I sort of cornered the market there,
Yeah, but I remember being so impressed because you had students that were like years old at that time. So it must have been, I know that, it wasn't like, I would have a class, maybe 6-week class, and then they were done, right? But you had these people that were just like going, and you had figured out how to have students, so it's a tribute to your teaching and to your sort of pushing them so that they were continuing to learn. That's what was so impressive to me, was that you continue to have stuff for them to, to learn.
Yeah, thank you. I realized very quickly that it was not going to work to just have an 8-week class. That was not going to work. We did that, and then they needed to progress onto something else, and then so eventually it sort of evolved into levels.
Right.
You would have beginning, intermediate, advanced level.
I remember you telling me about it, and I was just like so impressed and so blown away. Like, how did she do this? Like, it just was so beyond what I would have done or what I ever did.
Well, this is what will happen when you you have to support your kids, and pay the bills. So I kept trying to think of additional things that we could do to keep the ball rolling. Keep people interested and encourage the learning process, because I really had a body of students who were doing fantastic work, so I really wanted to encourage that.
But all of that is still serving you today. I feel like, all of that instruction and, experimentation and all of that. I mean, you're like, I don't know, you're sort of like, to me, a pioneer. You did almost the entire, well, we're gonna go over to Padlet, but well, in fact, let's do that now. Let me see, what do? I share my screen and we go to your Padlet. Okay, so now you should see all of your pictures, right, at Padlet?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what I was going to say was, I mean, you're almost like exclusively are almost our only author for this whole series of CP surfaces. I mean, the only one that you didn't was drafting
The
film.
drafting film.
Gretchen
Yeah.
Parker did,
Yeah,
but I
Gretchen
mean,
did that one. Yeah.
I mean, it's something to be able to say, yeah, I work on clapboard, but to be able to write a book on clapboard and pastel mat and black paint, I mean, it's a little bit nuts, Amy. I don't even know how you do it.
Well,
Then what do? You come up with the best-selling color pencil book ever,
oh
with
gosh.
the colors workbook. And we probably should look at your work first, but I just can't help but talk about these things because it's just so amazing that are you seeing the colors workbook right now, by the way? Sometimes
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
So let's just go ahead, since I'm looking at this, let's just go ahead and jump to, I don't know how to get back to Padlet. Oh, there we go. Just to jump to, like, how did you come up with this, color theory?
The color thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting because, like I said, my training was in black and white, gray values, that kind of thing. And I graduated having a really good understanding of composition and design and value. But color to me was kind of a vast, confusing wilderness. I mean, my color work, it's not that I couldn't tell the difference between a red and a green and a blue, and a darker and lighter. But when you started talking about things, this is bright, or this is dull, or this is warm, or this is cool, I just was kind of like, I don't know. And so my color work initially, I felt, was not exactly coloring book level. I mean, like, I would think when I say coloring book, what I mean is put this color here, put this color here.
Like
It
raw
wasn't
color.
that basic, but it really wasn't rich, in my opinion. And so I knew that I needed to learn more about color. So I sort of set out on this mission to teach myself color, which was not an easy task because all of the information I was finding was geared towards painters and designers. It wasn't geared towards colored pencil artists. And it's not that the principles are that much different. It's just that there's a translation process involved between information geared towards painters to colored pencil that it threw me off a little bit. So then I was real appreciative from my students' perspective about how that was a stumbling block for them. What I found so often in my classes was that students were waiting for me to tell them what color to use. They could not see it. They could not figure out how to get it. And I thought, what we need are not formulas. We need a strategy for how to look at a color and determine what its hue is, what its value is, what its intensity is, so that they can mix it themselves.
Right. Yeah.
And then they can move on to using these other colors that I call convenience colors because they have a better understanding of what those colors are and how they relate to the color wheel.
So how long did it take for you to because obviously you didn't write the book until you'd figured all of this out and then used it for a good long time, I'm sure. So how long roughly did it take for you to sort of, coalesce this all into a system?
I would say it was 20 years.
Oh,
And the reason I say that is because once I started figuring it out, I would teach it to my students in little workshops. But they were kind of guinea pigs. I felt sorry for them in a way because I would do an exercise and I'd think, well, that was dumb. That was a dumb exercise. Why did I have them do that? So we're not doing that. We're going to do this instead, So it kind of evolved over the years. And I really didn't have it to a place where I felt confident presenting it to a publisher for a long time. And even at that, I'm kind of a shy Midwestern girl. And the idea of approaching a publisher to me was just a little scary. And then you had me write these other books. And then I thought, well, maybe Anne would like to do this. And so that's how it all happened. That's
And
all I
boy,
wanted.
that hit, neither of us knew. I mean, I had a pretty good inkling that it was going to be popular, but we did not know how incredibly popular this book
Well,
was going to
well,
be.
you know that my joke to you and to everybody I talked to was, of course, I'm going to write this book and only 6 people are going to buy it, you know, because it's a lot of work. I mean, there's no getting around it. It's a lot of work. So you have to really want to learn color.
Yeah.
To commit to doing the work. And it's so different from anything else I've published that I just thought, I don't know. I don't want to make you think that I know there's a big market for it. I didn't know if there would be.
Yeah, I
You know?
thought it was going to be, I thought it was going to be a good seller, but man, I mean, telling you, for those of you listening, it just, it is still popular, but it completely flew off the shelves for, I think, a solid 6 months. I mean, it was just crazy. Yep, you done good there, Amy. All right.
Thank
So,
you.
now we're going to talk a little bit. Oh man. All right. It looks to me like the stuff on top of the Padlet maybe is older work. And
Yes, I did start with older,
okay.
older
So,
things.
because I remember these from days gone by. This
Right.
beautiful calm before the storm. Now you live in you mostly live in
Ohio.
in North Canton, is that right?
Mostly in northeastern Ohio.
And then, but part of the time you live in
In Gettysburg, Pennsylvania.
Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. So is that how you got onto the
Yeah, what
Civil War?
happened was I've always had a very serious interest in the American Civil War because my dad was a big Civil War buff.
Okay.
And we would visit Civil War battlefields. And I wasn't particularly interested in the battle scenes and the generals and all of that part. What I was interested in was how this war between Americans impacted the average person. And so I began researching and doing this series of images. And initially I was just doing them, you know, in my North Canton setting. But over the summer, my husband and I would go to various fine arts shows, and we would set up a booth. And we noticed that we always did, you know, better in areas that had a strong Civil War
Oh, right.
presence. So one day we had done a show in Gettysburg and he was out for a walk and he saw this little gallery space for rent, or this storefront for rent. And he said, what if we did this instead? And I laughed because he said, did you forget that we live 320 miles away from here, you know? And he said, well, we wouldn't, if we treated it like we do these shows, we wouldn't have to be there all the time. You could just be open when you wanted to. We wouldn't have to keep schlepping this stuff all over the place. We'd have a permanent location. We could just try it for a year and see how it goes. And that's what happened. We tried the gallery for a year. I was only open on weekends, and it wasn't every weekend. It was like maybe every other weekend a month, and particularly in the tourist season. And then it just kind of grew from there. It was popular, and we eventually got ourselves a little efficiency apartment, and then, you know, we just started doing the gallery. And so I did that for 10 years. I had that gallery by myself for 10 years, and then I turned it into a co-op gallery because, frankly, it was just getting to be a little bit more work. I was spread it a little too thin. And so then we ran it for another 5 years as a co-op gallery with myself and 5 other artists. And then, as luck would have it, we closed right before the pandemic, not knowing the pandemic was coming. Just because foot traffic had kind of dropped off. And I'm really glad, because that would have been bad.
Well, I want to talk about this, but not from the Civil War aspect, just from so many things. The color, I mean, the color is just so vibrant and beautiful. So the beautiful, beautiful blues, the beautiful greens, you know, anybody who's tried to work to do landscapes in color pencil knows you know, greens are difficult in color
Greens
pastel.
are tough. Yes,
They're
they are.
really, really hard. They're too green too often, or, so then you have to add some blues, and then they can go too blue, and you have to add some yellows, and they can go too yellow. It's just they're a
Yes,
real problem,
it can be a
and your
problem.
trees in the background are just so incredible. I mean, that light coming through those trees to me just feels very Amy Lindenberger, first of all. And it's just so beautifully done. I'm going to guess that you have a little bit. I'm going to use the mouse. Uh, can you see my mouse? I don't know if you can.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, uh-huh.
So my guess is that you use just a little bit of real golden yellow around these shadows well, I know you did this ages ago.
No, I have a pretty clear memory actually of a lot of that. I used some Prismacolor goldenrod
Okay.
around those edges.
Though,
Um,
that yellow on the edge just makes them glow, like glow. It's just so awesome. Do
Thank
you
you.
remember your trick on the greens? How to, what it was that made those greens so awesome in the back, so perfect?
In the background,
Yeah.
really, I just kind of kept them real limited value range and very muted, very dulled greens. All things like what do I want to say?
Marine green,
Brown
olive green.
ochre and olive green and those
Deep-
kind of things that
Maybe
were
some
very
sepia,
muted.
yeah,
Yeah.
maybe some sepia or black grape to kind of,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But then in the foreground, you did these luscious "I'm alive" blackberry
Yeah.
bushes, without any hesitation, and those are beautiful too.
Thank you. That was a real challenge because the whole thing is assembled from like 7 different reference photos that I took. The whole scene is made up, but I did refer to actual reference photos.
Right.
But then I had to keep kind of tweaking the colors to get them. I wanted there to be a certain amount of detail in the foreground, and I wanted to sort of lead you back to the soldiers. And I wanted the ones on top to be yellower to convey more sunlight, and the ones below to be bluer underneath. So that was many more vibrant colors,
Yeah.
more vibrant colors. Yeah.
It's just a wonderful piece. I mean, I don't remember the actual first time I saw it, but I do remember absolutely loving it. And we're going back probably about the beginning of the magazine, around 2000.
Yes. Right. Yeah.
Now tell me about the writing on this one, or just tell me the story on this.
Well, this is Rose O'Neill Greenhouse. She was a Confederate spy. She lived in Washington at the time the Civil War began, and when her husband was living, he was a government official, and so she knew all the right people. She was a widow by the time the war started, but she knew all the right people, so she could entertain a lot and she could get information a lot. And a man who was preparing to leave the United States Army and join the Confederate Army contacted her about forming a spy ring of women because they would be less obvious than men. And that writing is the code, the cipher code that he gave her to send her notes. And it's actually, there are 2 of her handwritten messages in the National Archives using that cipher code.
Wow.
So that's the code.
Is this on sanded paper? How did you do this?
It's on a very large sheet of white museum board. Yeah. It's a very large drawing.
How did you do the light drawing on top of the dark?
No, it's this characters you mean.
Yeah.
I erased out the shapes and then I inserted other colors.
You erased out the code.
Yeah, I erased out the shapes from the dark background. And in the dark, and I should say the dark background of her clothing was not fully developed at that point. It was at a much lighter stage.
All right.
And then I erased it out and then I worked around it,
Oh my gosh,
so
much work.
Oh, it was a tremendous amount.
Yeah. Today you would do it on pastel mat and you could do the lettering on top,
Right. Couldn't they do that in the olden days?
No, in the guess I just didn't realize how many landscapes you done. Now this is colored pencil with graphite under. Oh, so on claymore,
That's the
right?
clayboard. Yes,
Yep.
that's the clayboard technique. Yeah. Yeah, that all came about because I was looking when I had my shop in Gettysburg, I had a local group of artists who would go out in the field and do plein air work. But I was the only colored pencil artist. And so in 2 hours, they're doing these beautiful paintings, and I'm doing this. And I thought, I need a different method here. So that's how the clayboard came about. Because what I would do would be take the clayboard panels and coat them with powdered graphite. And then it was a subtractive technique, erasing out the lights.
Yeah.
Adding in the darks, but it was all done with graphite. And then I would spray it with, I used to use workable fixative, but now I use matte finish. It works a lot better. Spray it with that. And then the color really is just applied very loosely and blended with solvent, odorless mineral spirits. And it's this basic stain over the panel.
So is that a similar procedure as this one?
Same. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And of course, we can learn more about that in one of these books, the clayboard book.
Yeah, in your clayboard book, right? You can.
Awesome. I don't. Is this one in the book? I don't remember this one.
I think it's right inside the cover page.
Oh, is it? Well,
Yeah,
that's really cool. I mean, the you can kind of do a plein air sort of thing is like,
Yeah.
Really nice, because normally it's just a sketch, right? If you're gonna
Right.
if you're gonna do anything quickly in color pencil. I mean, to me, this is one of the most beautiful, sensitive horse portraits I've ever seen. I absolutely adore it.
Thank you. I had a wonderful time doing that
You
piece.
did?
I really enjoyed it.
Wow. And it's not like you do a lot of horses.
No, but when I was doing my Civil War work, I got into doing horses because of that. And I found that I really enjoyed doing horses. So I looked for a while, I did looked for excuses to do horses.
Oh, it's just so beautiful. It's like there's not a wasted line. Like there's not too much. It's not overdone. It's just exactly right. And then the look in his eye or her eye, whichever. Ah, it just gives me goosebumps. But this one, okay, this one, everybody's already heard what I was going to say about this. I have not seen this before today. And I just think it's really cool. And I see that it is watercolor pencil on cold press watercolor paper.
On cold press paper. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I can see the texture in there. And then plus just plain old color pencil, right? So
yeah, the accents are all done. The details and the accents are done with regular colored pencil, but there's not much that's been added. It's almost all watercolor pencil.
Yeah, I can kind of see like these grasses probably, and these grasses here.
And the detail on the windmill.
And the windmill, in the whatever they're called. And it's only a 7x9. It's a nice
big
little piece. So if you were here early, you heard me say to Amy, would you teach this? Because we don't have any classes on watercolor pencil, and it's gorgeous. It's so atmospheric. And Amy said, sure. And
I did.
Hey, I forgot there's a chat here. How come I'm not seeing that? Usually I see. Oh yeah, you should be able to see it too.
No, I don't see anything.
Yeah, but I wonder why. Well, people might not know. I hope that everything is going okay. They might have changed something on Zoom. They're always changing.
Oh, yeah.
I usually see like a little notification if somebody has asked a question or
that sort
of thing, but I don't see that.
I'm clicking on chat right now to see if I can get anything to happen, and nothing is happening.
Huh. Oh, wait, I see it now. My camera was covering it up. I see one question. The chat says disabled. Well, why? Thank you, whoever. Oh, Sonia. Thank you. Why is the chat disabled? Like I said, they're always changing things. Okay. I think you can put something in the chat now. Or you can also put things in.
Now, I do see something showing up under Q&A.
Yeah, so that was Sonia saying the chat was disabled, but I think
Oh, I see.
I think I've enabled it now.
I see.
And so
Okay.
anyway, if you have a
Okay.
question at any time, you can either put it in the, there's somebody in the Q&A trying here if it works. Love your beginning conversation.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're a
You're
little
gonna make me
embarrassed,
blush
but
again.
oh well.
Okay, oh well, like I said, we were good girls. All right, so anyway, awesome. I look forward to Windmill It Done. Something like that. Like, how long do you think it actually takes you to draw something a 7x9 with that sort of atmospheric thing? Because what I'm thinking is you could do that on blue paper, right? You could do it on, because that's on yellow paper, right?
No, it's on watercolor. It's on white watercolor paper.
Oh, you're kidding me.
No,
Oh,
no, it's on cold press watercolor paper.
wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
But
That
no,
is,
it's not very time consuming. You can do that whole piece probably in.
I
Is
might have
it?
to take that class. I'm quite excited about that. I mean,
Yeah,
that is really, really cool. I mean, because I played a teeny tiny bit with watercolor pencils, but they kind of give me the hives because then you have to do brushes and brushes make me break out. So, but I feel like you might be able to help me with that. So
I might be able to. I feel a little bit like you do about brushes, so I don't use them a tremendous amount. And
yeah.
I've always told my students, I certainly am not a professional watercolorist.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
Well,
But I can make the watercolor pencils do what I want them to do.
And that is just beautiful. I would just be able to do, I just love that. Okay. Now, and then you're also, of course, an absolute pro on working on, why won't that open? Work on black. Oh, this is also one of my favorites of yours. The shine on that, the tip of that. Oh, I just absolutely love that shine, the sheen on her top of her head. It's just beautiful. Do you have anything to say about this?
That was a fun one because of all the different textures. I just really enjoyed the different textures in this. And one of the things, I mean, the horse is done on black too.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things I particularly like about black paper is you don't have to use a lot of color. Most people think you would have to use a lot of color because it's black. You really don't. You simply have to get the white, the reverse grisaille, the white underpainting in place. And then the other thing I like is how they just kind of emerge from the surface. I really love that effect of how they just kind of blossom from the surface. And
like out of the shadows,
right.
comes a drawing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, yes, you can do that. When I have tried working on black, and what I do is I go to look at your book,
Mm-hmm.
Before that you had the kit with the strawberries
Oh,
and
right.
glass. Yeah, and so I would
Right.
look at that kit, but I
Mm-hmm.
think I always overworked the white. So I had too much white down, and then
Yeah.
I would struggle with that, and then I would start to get mud, and then I'd be like, how come I'm not Amy Lindenberger? And I would so that's how it is. But maybe my all-time favorite piece that you've done on colored paper is this one right here. Oh my gosh. Amy, I can't tell you the number of times I have looked at this eye. It is perfection.
Oh, thank you. That was another fun one. I love doing that portrait and the glow that you could get in the skin tones on that toned paper. That thing was just exciting from beginning to end, developing it.
Now, I know this is in that book, the colored paper book, but just give me an idea here. Give us an idea. Like, is this area that's so smooth and beautiful, is that with a sharp pencil or a dull pencil or something in between?
It's all sharp pencil, all sharp pencil. Yep. Tiny strokes, sharp pencil.
The good old fashioned way.
Yeah, sharp point scumbling. Yep. That's
I
that's
love
the
this
skin.
I just love it. I love it, love it, love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. I'd be so proud of that if that were mine. Now, this one, of course, is a showstopper always. It's so amazing. That's on colored paper. And what is the paper? What color?
The paper is a color called tobacco, and you can see it showing through a little bit. You see that sort of point on the top of the bridge of the nose? Yeah, right in there. No, you were there before. Now come down. There you go. Yeah. And from there over to the left, just a little bit, that's the paper color showing through. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like tobacco. Now, these whiskers are so beautifully dark. Is that just white pencil?
Yeah, it's just white Prismacolor.
And it's Prismacolor?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You didn't use Stabilo or
I didn't. At that point, I don't even know if I was totally aware of some of the other whites that were available. But because there's not a tremendous amount of white in it, I was able to do what I needed to do with the Prismacolor white.
Can you give me a sense? This is a 7x9. It's in the CP Services colored paper book, right? But give me a sense of how long give me a sense of how long this would take you if you weren't having to stop and scan it constantly for a book, because like that really interrupts
that
everything.
does slow you down quite a bit. Well, I did work pretty fast, so I would say probably with the colored paper cuts down on the number of hours of work because you've got that color creating the ground. I would say probably about 6 hours.
Oh.
Yeah.
A 7x9?
Yeah.
I'm imagining if I did this with white paper on Stonehenge with my Prismacolors to get this level of contrast. I mean, I'm going to say upwards of 30 hours.
Yeah, I would believe that. There's something I do in the beginning of the book where I do a little composition of pumpkins. And I did the same composition on white paper, orange paper, brown paper, and a complementary color. And I compare the number of hours that each one took me. The colored paper, when you use one that has a color that's contained in your value range, it just cuts down on the time so much. And that comes from working as an illustrator, and I had to produce things on a deadline. And I had to figure out the most efficient way to do everything.
Right. Yeah. Well, like I said, it served you well. Now, gosh, there's some here I haven't even seen. So, well, I mean, this is also, this is pastel matte. So this is the first one.
Yeah, that's pastel matte. Mm-hmm.
Little 7x9. This probably took you 4 hours.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I figured.
Yeah, something like that. Because the pastel matte color is that sort of peachy color that you see in the middle sky. There you go. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. It's a colored pastel matte. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I really should take some of your classes because I have tried pastel matte twice, and again, I think I always try to make everything act as if it's Stonehenge, and that I don't have to change anything. I just do my thing, and now I'm on this new surface, and it's supposed to just work. but
Right.
it doesn't.
And then, and the paper doesn't want that. So
No,
yeah.
the paper
Yeah.
wants something else. I mean, look at that glow. I mean, that's so Amy, isn't it? You're
Yeah.
a very glowy person. This
I,
has
I like
glow,
glow.
this has glow, this has glow, this has glow, this has glow. You're all about glow.
I'm all about glow, I guess.
You sure are. I've never really put that all together before. But this is really different.
Yeah, that's really different.
Peony Dreams.
Well, that's another experiment I did where I took masa paper that is along the lines of Japanese rice paper.
Oh, right.
It's cottony on the front and it's very smooth on the back. And I crumpled it up and I soaked it under water and then I spread it out. And what happens with masa paper, where you crumpled it, the folds sort of break the surface a little bit. And then when you paint over it with watercolor, or in my case, watercolor pencil, the paint seeps into the veining and you get this batik-like effect.
Okay.
And then, so I do these backgrounds of different colors, get this batik effect. And then when it's done, I mount it on a piece of heavyweight illustration board. So it's rigid because masa paper is very delicate. And to try to draw on it, you can't get any grab. So I mount it on a piece of heavyweight illustration board, and then you've got a surface that once it's completely dry, you can just draw over like you would.
So here's what's different about you. This is what makes you Amy Lindenberger. So most people would go, okay, masa paper, this will do this and this and this, but oh, too bad you can't draw on it because it'll just tear. And so they go on to the next surface. They don't take that next step. I mean, this is a jelly bean class, just waiting to happen. I mean, just to show us how you do this.
Yeah, it would be a hard thing for people to do with me.
Yeah, no, but it's a demo
online setting, but I could show them how it's done. Yeah. And that would be interesting.
Because this feels to me like something that someone in class could just this could just be their thing, they would just run with this. And I mean, I love it. It's very, so I'm assuming that you didn't have peonies to be in mind to begin with. You kind of let what masa paper did dictate to you what it wanted to be.
And now when I do one of these, I have one of two approaches. The first one is just to put down colors that I like. I don't have anything in mind. I just put down colors that I like. And then I wait for it to dry and I mount it. And then I just stand it up, and let it sit a while and think about what might develop out of there. My other method is to have something in mind and intentionally choose colors that I think would work well as a background. So I kind of have two different ways I go.
Yeah. You could show those in the jelly bean class, the ones that in the past. Yeah. You were just you're a one-woman encyclopedia of color pencil. Let's try thisness. Really, you are. So this is, let me see, this is Still Life with Lemons, color pencil, and pan pastel, a new medium, on pastel matte. And beautiful reflection here. I feel like this is in something. Is this also in the
pastel? Yeah.
Okay. And so give us your 2 or 3 minute shoot, the word left my brain. 2 or 3 minutes
synopsis.
Lecture or whatever on successful use of pastel matte.
Pastel matte.
Is it the pencil brand? Is it the point? Is it the lay? I mean, what kind of can you sort of summarize an overall general technique on how to be successful on pastel matte? Like I could say drafting film, you don't want to use a sharp point. And you have to use a light touch, that sort of thing, right?
Yeah, right. Well, let's see. What can I say about that? for everything I did on pastel mat or have done up to now, I have just used, no, that's not true. I have used a couple of different brands of pencils. I tend to use sharp points for almost everything I do. I'm not really a dull point person.
Okay.
Um,
But doesn't pastel mat really eat them up?
Well, yeah, it does eat them up. Maybe what I should say is sharper points. I don't know that I use the absolute, fine needle point that I use on some things. But I'm not much of a dull point person.
Me either.
But I definitely on pastel mat, for me, a dark to light layering approach works much better. And that's very counter to how I normally work on lighter surfaces. So that always takes me a little bit of an adjustment because I tend to lay in my darker colors first and then layer the lighter colors on top. So it actually works. Reminds me very much of when I used to do pastel,
Oh,
chalk pastel.
Oh.
Because that's how I worked with pastel. I did my darks first and then I layered my lighter colors on top.
Yeah, of course that's what you do. Otherwise you get mud.
Right.
Yeah.
So to me, it actually makes the colored pencil behave a lot more like pastel
Yeah.
than colored pencil.
Yeah.
And it makes them more opaque, which is why, of course, you can put light on top of dark
Right.
on this surface.
That's a really great little synopsis. I feel like that helps even me. And I really have had, I mean, everybody does this beautiful work on pastel mat and I don't. I mean, you haven't seen any of mine because, it's not seeable.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So like this, oh, I love this so much. The little
My
puppies.
puppies.
You taught this guy right here, right? On a cruise.
Yeah, I
That
have.
was awesome. See all those little puppies on pastel mat. So cute.
Yeah.
Is there anything you struggle with drawing wise? Like you can really draw.
Yeah, I don't, that is my background. So drawing elements don't bother me at all. I think the thing I've always struggled with the most is, and I talk to my students about it a lot, trying to make things look random, patterning, try to look random or the effects of those trees, for example, so that you didn't get, 6 dots placed a 1/4 inch apart. And, we just kind of fall into this, here's where we're going to put this, and that business of trying to get randomness, get natural looking textures on things. That's probably, if there's anything I've struggled with over the years, that would be it.
So yeah, not making sure. I know exactly what you mean. I mean, I think that's what makes things look realistic. Actually, is that random?
Right. Got to get that randomness, and it's just we're not geared towards. Most of us aren't geared towards doing things randomly.
And you even like in hair, I mean, that's kind of what's the difference between realistic hair and not realistic hair is this is curving here, but they're not all completely curving exactly this way.
Right.
So I'm kind of curved that way, and that's
right.
that randomness that makes realism. So I've held off on this one because to me, this is brand new.
It is brand new. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's behind on the screen. It's much lighter than what it really is. It's actually quite a bit darker than that. I did this. This is done on a sanded paper in a aubergine color, kind of a reddish purple color. Yeah. And it was I was teaching a workshop in at a retreat center, and the housing was out in the woods. And the day I arrived to unpack, it just poured, just absolutely poured. And this was the scene as I looked out my back door into the woods. So I always liked it. So yeah.
I mean, it is so like, this is so wet right here. It is just so believably wet, road. But then your little, it's sort of Monet-ish, don't you think? Like the
Yeah, I
little
was
light.
really, yeah, I was really going for, I tend to, as colored pencil artists do, I tend to over detail things. And I wanted to push myself to do something that was more impressionistic and not draw every single leaf.
Yeah.
So that was kind of what that was all about.
Yeah, and you did such a beautiful job. I like to see it small. I mean, because it's like so amazing when I just realized that we've got questions and answers, so I'll go there next. But when you see it very small, it's so realistic. It could be a photo, and then, I mean, that's what I love about Impressionism. Then you get
Yeah.
up close to it and you're like, oh, this is like,
No.
she didn't draw a single leaf.
No, it's just little patches of color is
Yeah.
all it is. There's really not a true leaf shape. Maybe
Yeah.
a couple over on the far left, but for the most part, it's just patches of color.
No, you really, there's no leaves there. It's color and value. That's it.
Yep.
It's very Monet. I just love it. Let me get to these Q&A and these questions here. I see. Okay, Kay Doer. Learning more about Amy's variety of techniques. Amy, you are amazing with your solutions for using CP on a variety of surfaces. Amazing, Amy. Nice to hear from you, Kay. Lisa, don't know how to say that last name. I won't butcher it. Loved your class, Amy, on black paper. What I appreciate about your lessons is you teach techniques no one else teaches. I also took 2 of your color classes. So informative.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
Lisa.
that was Lisa Kendall.
Yeah. Yeah.
And anonymous, just desire a list of all papers for all different pencil choices. Also, what methods have you found are effective or not on which papers, on which specifically? Yeah, that's a big old question, but I wonder if we could turn that into a color magazine article. I mean, it's kind of a big question. Are you seeing it? I mean, like, it's
I'm
also
seeing
subjective.
it. I'm just reading through it.
It's pretty subjective, right? But it does give me an idea about something for
Yeah, but like for example, like on black paper,
yeah.
my opinion, I love polychromos pencils, but they're almost useless on black paper because they're very translucent. They let too much black show through no matter what you do with them. So unless you're looking for something that's really muted, I just stay away from it. On black paper, I would always go with Prismacolor and Pablos, Caran d'Ache Pablos, because they're also have a lot of colors that are close to opaque. So that's one thing I can say off the top of my head,
Yeah. That's a good question. I mean, it's a good question. It's just a big question.
It's a good question. And the next one is actually kind of similar about the papers and techniques that work on which paper.
Will the Glow Lady provide a comprehensive goodbye, which is all these papers and techniques that work on which paper? Well, I mean, she wrote these books. She spent a lot of time writing them, and they are probably the best way to learn about the paper and the techniques. And if you get the digital version, they're not even expensive. So that's what I would
because
suggest.
I mean, in each of the books, I do talk about the characteristics of the surface,
Right.
like paper. I know for a fact, like for example, I always worked on Stonehenge black. I really like Stonehenge black, but I can accept the Canson mutants. And what was the other one? The new one, Fabriano Black is a very nice surface, but doesn't have very good tooth. But then there's like art again, Strathmore art again. No. All
right, you know what? You see this last comment? I think she's onto something. Create a booklet. all the information you're
Yeah.
discussing, because you truly do know your paper stuff. I mean, you know it. And you can make tons of money. Okay, now, Suzanne, we want a guarantee on that, by the way.
And we do.
And
Yeah.
it will fly off the
Yeah.
shelves.
And
You know,
Sam's going to market them for us, right? So that we make tons of money off
yeah,
of it.
Suzanne will let everybody on Facebook know that it's a fabulous book. But actually, I am writing Suzanne's name down. And
Yeah.
I am, reminding myself of that comment because I actually think that's a great idea. Just a little booklet rather than having an article in
Mhm.
in the magazine. So yeah, I think that those are great comments, folks. But for those of you who really want to know how to do it, there is this. There are all these CP, and that's not why we do these connect. We really do the connect because where else do you get to meet these artists in this sort of one-on-one way? And I see here, connect with Amy on social media, so you can find out what she's doing next on Instagram or
On
now
Facebook.
after this connect, you get an email, and there's maybe you already got it. I don't really know, but there's definitely a link to this Padlet where you can come back and take a longer look at all of these beautiful pieces that Amy's put on here. And you can also take a look at this connect with Amy with social media. And you can look at all this, right? It's all there. And I see a couple more. I'm about to work on black paper. This is Anna Terlise. I'm about to work on black paper and appreciate knowing that the polychromos will not work well. I'll be using my trusty Prismacolors. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Polychromos has a few colors that hold up pretty well, mostly in the yellows range, but most of their colors just like settle right into the paper. Wonderful pencils, just not for black paper.
Have you ever used the Graphitint?
I have.
Are they considered a color pencil?
I don't know. I think they are. I think the last time I looked, well, I mean, if you're talking about like Colored Pencil Society rules,
Yeah.
I think they are. I think they are considered a color pencil.
Very few people do anything with that. I mean, Elizabeth Patterson, when she started her Rainscapes, she was using a lot of Graphitint for that subtle,
Right.
gray backgroundy look.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder why they're not used.
I don't know that this is the answer, but I do know that when I first investigated them and I looked at the light fastness ratings, they were not good.
Okay.
So I got away from them because of that.
Yeah.
But now in the latest workbook, they've improved a lot of. The manufacturer has gone back and I think it's Derwent, isn't it?
It's Derwent. Yeah, it's absolutely
Derwent. Gone back and reformulated them so that the range as a whole has really improved. I
can't wait to see what Amy Lindenberger comes up with Graphitins at some point in the future.
Yeah, I have to add that to the list of things that I am going to do. Okay.
Well, this is about it. We try to stick to an hour, and we're just about there. Unless, do you have something you'd like to say, Amy?
I have something. The only thing I would say is that you look at almost all, but maybe two or three of these pieces came about as a result of your asking me to write the books. So, I really have you to thank because, while I do use all these techniques, I don't want you to think I didn't use them. I wouldn't probably have dug into them as deeply as I did. And I wouldn't, yourself, it is different to do work for yourself than it is to teach someone else how to do something. You have to think about things in a completely different way. So I feel like having had to write the books, having had to teach people how to do these things, I understand them much better than if I were just working on them myself. So I thank you for the opportunities you have given me.
Well, we are always grateful to be associated in any way with Amy Lindenberger, who is a star in my book and always has been. I mean, I can still see myself walking through your studio, just being just so amazed, like, wow, this woman has created a little color pencil powerhouse here in Ohio.
Somebody referred to it once as a cult. Cult pencil cult.
I would
Said,
say, oh, you guys, that's right. I would be teaching and they would all know the answer to something and it was the same answer. And I would say, oh, you Amyites.
yeah, that's I remember you called them. Like you called them Mamieyites. Yes.
Amyites, that's great. All right. Well, thank you, Suzanne, and you are great too, smiley face. All right. Well, it was a wonderful hour, and Amy is
You.
actually coming to visit me in 4 days. She's driving over from Ohio to my little town here in Southern Illinois, and Andy Burchett, who you might know from our classes, and Pearl de Chalane, who you might know from our classes. They're coming too, and the four of us are gonna have fun.
Yes, yes.
It's
We'll
gonna
have our little colored pencil party.
yeah. All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming. We'll see you soon, Amy. And
All right.
goodbye.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.